Here's a mistake that I make in my copywriting, and I'm ready to admit it. I'm Justin Hitt from Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. One of the big mistakes I make in my copywriting is I'm always creating that next course, that next article, that next sales letter, that next landing page for my own business or for my own internal uses rather than doing paid work for clients. I don't know if you're in that situation, but you're writing a lot of copy and materials to get customers, yet don't have any customers to show for it. And that happens from time to time. Before I got to the point where I was doing technical writing, I was doing different specialty technical writing, and actually had a small base of copywriting clients. Now, again, I'm real transparent with you guys. I'm not writing copy all the time. The majority of my sales copy I write for myself, but I will admit I write more sales copy than I actually use. Now, there are methods where you're going to write a sales letter in order to get a few lead generation landing pages. Your sales letter is going to explore all the ideas, capture all the information, you're going to write 100 headlines and only use 2 or 3 of them. That's okay. But if you're doing that for one project and you get that one project off the ground and then take the profits from that one project and reinvest it in what you're doing to kind of automate, and the example that I have for you is you get a sales letter that works, and perhaps you're mailing the letter. You've got the letter being used on a website that you're sending traffic to, and the same letter is also being used as a step in another sequence. You want to you don't get to that point where you have 3 uses of the same letter until you've got one use of the letter that's consistent and that can be sent to a mail house, for example. So let's say you have a letter that goes to new households in a particular community to introduce your service or your client's service. You want to get that letter to the point where a mail house can simply get a new movers list and send that letter. And so that you got that constant flow trickling in. I did this with a prospect newsletter. There was a certain criteria that my assistant would put somebody on a list. Anybody that went onto that list automatically got my prospect newsletter. They would get 6 issues of the prospect newsletter. And then if they didn't click or take an action, they didn't engage in a mailing list or otherwise get tagged on their account, then after 6, I would drop them. Now, it was profitable to keep sending it to them, and maybe I should have kept sending it to them as long as the overall campaign was profitable. But essentially, if they were on list A, they got the prospect newsletter. If they didn't take a certain action, or if they did take a certain action, it changed their livelihood in the list. So for example, if they had a monetary transaction, I would extend the newsletter out 12 months. So for free, I was sending the prospect newsletter to my targeted list of prospects. And then if they took any one of these specific actions, which was to purchase, have a consultation, or to attend an event, then I would automatically send that letter to them for the rest of 12 months. Now, the prospect newsletter had bounce backs. It had customer testimonials. It had a lot of reasons to make a contact. So it wasn't just simply nothing. It was actually a real prospect newsletter. And then if they didn't take certain actions, they would drop off that newsletter and it would free up a slot for somebody else. I had a budget to send a certain number of newsletters, and I was sure enough trying to focus the new people who got newsletters on. Basically, I was trying to focus the newsletter on people who could buy. That's one idea and concept. It's really boring after a while, and unfortunately, I stopped doing that stuff sometimes, and it always comes back to bite me. Dan Kennedy's magnetic marketing letter, where you have a series of letters that offer special reports. Well, you're going to find some of those letters work all the time, and you can start building up a sequence, whereas you put a name on a list, they automatically get the letter, they automatically get the email, they automatically get the text message, and then you weed stuff out of that campaign as it stops working, rather than creating new stuff to try. You do not want to be in a position where you're just throwing spaghetti against the wall. You're going to try a new sales letter. You're going to try a new broadcast email. You're going to try a new... Please work in campaigns and have a plan. Lately, now that I'm on a kind of a sabbatical, I'm not trying to get clients or anything. I'm getting some rental properties and readjusting some personal stuff. But I'm going to re-enter the market probably in 12 months with a simple magnetic marketing type series where the customer requests or the prospect requests a special report that sells either a consultation or a high ticket project. And so I will find the 4 or 5 letters that up front get somebody to raise their hand on a topic, to get the special report, to make a decision in the special report to move forward. And then I'm also going to sell my prospect newsletter. So it'll be $69 a year or $79 a year. I see Craig Simpson does that. It's a really good newsletter he's putting out. I'm paying to receive light marketing materials. But ultimately, periodically, I do get a sales letter, and he does offer good stuff that I'm not quite in the market for, but I have recommended it to others because it's a good quality presentation. So I'm thinking of doing the exact same thing. Now, I got a lot of content to recycle because I have created new content over and over. I have created more content than I need. So you may argue that, your content creation is helping, but I'll tell you, the day I had a system for getting consistent clients, I'm busy with my private clients. I may have 3 private clients at any given time, and I'm so busy doing billable work with them that I'm hesitant to even start marketing out there. But again, 1 is none, 2 is 1, and 3, they may stay around. My point being, though, is don't fall into the trap where you need the next latest sales letter, the next video sales letter, the next gimmick, the next social media platform, the next video platform. If you're going to create content, have a purpose for the content. This podcast, for example, the only purpose of this podcast is to give you new ideas and concepts to help you improve your copywriting business. Every message includes an ability for you to ask questions. All I'm doing is collecting questions. I use the questions, the topic test. I use the traffic on the podcast, the topic test, and those help me decide what campaigns are worth investing money into to go direct to a target niche of customers. Now, some of that target niche of customers is on this podcast. I thank you for subscribing, but you can subscribe on various platforms. You can subscribe on my main website, but it only matters if you subscribe on my main website on a mailing list that's specific to the topic in which you responded. Now, if you want to discuss these models, when I do an open Q&A, we can discuss these models. We can diagram them out. They make a lot more sense if you see the diagram. My point being is, while it's a lot of fun to create, in the long run, that daily action, that boring daily action that generates results, sending the letter that works to a new audience. Dan Kennedy used to say all the time, it's easier to find a new audience than to get customers to buy something else. Well, that might be true in some areas. But he also says that the customer, you get a sale to make a customer, and you want to know what your customers want so you can offer them new things. Well, if you have a steady stream of new customers coming on board, the first step is getting them to be a new customer. The second step is to find out what they're interested in. And the third step is only to create things that drive back-end sales. See, that's more focused. That's more deliberate. That's more creating with purpose, rather than what a lot of folks are doing is simply creating stuff and throwing it against the wall to see what works. They got 1,000 blog articles. They've got a newsletter. They're even featured in major magazines, yet they don't have any customers. I'm pushing a 95% billable rate, meaning 95% of the work I do is billable. And I'm doing that by focusing in on specific private clients. I've narrowed it down. And so in this case, I've taken a sabbatical. I keep the private clients. I'm not reaching out for new customers, but I am still creating with strategy content that's designed for me to generate leads, content that's designed for me to answer certain questions, what topics are relevant to potential future private clients. And then I'm also packaging materials that I already have instead of creating new materials in order to give bonuses to newsletter subscribers, to create small reports, and to set up a very specific business model and marketing plan. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. If you have any questions about driving that boring and simple critical path that grows your copywriting business by getting you many more clients and billable work. So if you want to be creative, your customers will pay you to be creative. That's how I work now. I get that creative out of my system because the customer pays me to write them stuff. But ultimately, how do you do that on your terms? Well, I've answered some of that and more, but if I'm missing something that you still have questions to, visit me at www.adbriefings.co.uk, and I'd be more than happy to answer those questions in another podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm here to help copywriters, marketers, and business development professionals use words that sell to grow their agency or copywriting business. Thanks for listening.